Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. Today we are going to create a AWS code pipeline for building and deploying ECS applications. So first we'll create a ECR repo, then we will create a Git connection so that code pipeline can pull the source code from GitHub. Then we'll create a code pipeline. So there are a couple of prerequisites for this. One is we need to have a Git repo, be it a Bitbucket or a GitHub, and we need a ECS cluster with a service deployed in it. Let me show you how the code pipeline architecture will look like. So we'll pull the code from GitHub. Code pipeline will trigger a build. That build will upload an image to ECR repo, and ECS deploy will take that image and deploy it to ECS cluster. This is the Git repo that I'm talking about. It has a Docker file, index HTML, and a build spec. So index file has hello from Docker container test. It's just a H1 tag that I've mentioned as HTML. And in the Docker file, you'll see I'm pulling an Nginx image and then just copying the index.html and running the Nginx container. This is the sample cluster that is deployed, and it has one service called web service. There is a task definition for this. HTTP task definition has three revisions as of now. First, let's create the ECR repo. I'll name this HTTP slash Nginx. So it's a custom name. You can mention anything. Other things I'll keep as default, and I'll create this one. Once this is created, let's go to the code pipeline. In code pipeline, you'll see there is a settings sections. Go to that. In the connections, we'll see I already have one connection, but if you don't have it, then you can create a connection and then select whatever Git provider you're using, name the connection and connect to it. Once you click on the connect, because I have already logged in, it is not showing me that screen, but it will ask you for authorization. And after that, you have to install the application. So if you don't already have one, then you need to click on install a new app. Once that is done, you can click on connect and it'll create a new connection for you. Before creating the code pipeline, I want to talk about build spec file. Mentions what all steps and what all actions the code build is going to take. So if you look at this file, it's a standard syntax that is supported by AWS, and you can go through the documentation to look at all the various settings which are available. But for us, few steps are enough. First, we need to mention a version. Second is the phases. And in phases, we have four phases. One is pre-build, build, post-build, and artifacts. Pre-build, this has commands to log into the ECR repo. And once we have logged in, we are just mentioning what is the repository URI, image tag to use in the further phases. Second phase is to build. This is actually building the Docker image. It is giving the latest tag. And then in the post build, this will push the Docker image to our ECR repository. If you look at the final line, it will mention that there is a printf statement and that is going in a particular file called image definitions.json. And this is the artifact that we are generating, image definitions.json. We'll see how this is used in the further steps. Then we'll go to code pipeline and we'll create a code pipeline. I'll select a custom build. Once we click on create, we'll see what the name of the pipeline should be given. We will give a name of the pipeline, a service role. You can create a new service role. I do have an existing service role. I'll just select that. But a new service role can be easily created. In the source stage, we need to mention the application that we just created in the connection. So the connection, I'll mention the connection, and in the repository, I'll mention which repo I'm particularly using and the default branch. You'll see there are webhooks. I'll just keep those as it is. In the build section, I'll add a code build. So there is ECR build and publish as well, but this does not have all the settings that we require. So I'll create a code build, and when I click on a create project, there are a few extra settings that we need to mention. So I'll just maximize this window. And in this, I'll mention a project name. Then if I scroll down, there are a lot of settings. We can keep most of them to the default. In the compute section, default is EC2. I'll just select that and keep it as it is. In the service role, I'll just create a new service role. Additional configuration I can add a few more details. If your container needs a privileged environment, then you need to select on this particular option. Otherwise, it's all good. For us, we don't need this option. In the below section, you can see we can mention a VPC. If you're selecting a VPC, then it will able to communicate everything within that VPC based upon the security groups. But please ensure that the VPC has the internet access, because otherwise it won't able to download anything to this particular instance. Environment variables, as of now, we don't need any environment variables or file system settings. If you look at the build spec file says buildspec.yml, but by default, it doesn't take that name. It takes buildspec.yml. So it won't recognize my file and the build will fail. So I'll just mention that it's a buildspec.yml. Just a spelling correction here. If you have something with other name, that will also work. You just need to mention that name here. The logs we do, it is a good practice to set up these logs so that you'll have visibility on how the builds are working and what sort of errors we are getting. But for now, I'll just remove that and click on create. Once that is created, it'll redirect me to the initial page. And again, in the environment, I don't need any environment. I'll just select on next because the build is set up. Now for deploy, I do need to give a Amazon ECS provider. And in the cluster name, I just select the cluster and the service. The image definition file, this is the file that was I mentioned earlier. So in the artifacts, you'll see we are exporting a image definitions.json. We're going to use that file here. We don't need a deployment timeout. I'll just create a next and let's create a pipeline. So as soon as I create the pipeline, it will be triggered. The source stage will start. It's successful after some time. If I scroll down, you'll see that there is a build stage which is going on. But uh, we have missed few things. So this will give us some errors. And let's just go through those errors. So if I click on the build, I see it has failed in the phase details. If I scroll down, I'll see a pre-build command execution error. It is not able to log into the AWS ECR repos, and that is due to a permission issue. I know that issue, but if you, let's say, do not know about such issues, then you can check the logs. If you enable the logs, you'll see those logs. I'll go to this role, and you can see this role does not have any permission related to ECR. So let's just add that permission. If you click on add new policy and you see there is a registry policy called Amazon EC2 Container Registry Power User. If you add this permission, it will give you all the access required to a EC2 instance for ECR repositories. So the build that we are generating, that will ultimately execute on a EC2 instance. If you remember, in the compute, we selected EC2 rather than a Lambda. So that's why we need this particular role. And if I go to the code pipeline and retry this build, what will happen? This time it will be successful because it has a permission to log in and do whatever other tasks that we have defined. Okay, so the build is successful this time. But if I go to the pipeline and if I scroll down, we'll face one more issue, that is the deploy issue. And let's try to troubleshoot this one now. Once you click on the view details, you'll see in the summary it says that the ECS container hello world does not exist. This is because we have made a mistake in our build spec YAML. In the 25th line, it is saying that the container name is hello world. This image definitions that we generated from the build is consumed in the deployment stage, right? So the build stage itself defines which is the container that we're going to use. My cluster has a web service and a container name is also web. And that is what I need to mention here. So I'll just update this file and add the name as web. If I save this, what will happen? Because we had selected all the hooks for this particular branch, then it will automatically trigger the source because I have updated the main branch for it. And once it is successfully built, it will start the deployment stage. And in the deployment stage, you can see in the task section, there is no task pending, one is running. And if you look at the time when it started, It was like half a minute ago. So a new task definition was created, HTTP 4. If you can remember, we only had HTTP 3 task definition. Now there is a 4 which is created, and it has been applied successfully. The deploy stage, it will take some time, but usually the changes are applied a bit faster than we can actually observe in the code pipeline. So let me go into this particular task, and I'll just click on the public IP that it has. It says hello from Docker container test. So our deployment is running. Any changes I make to the main branch will be applied as soon as there is a merge action, or there is a push action. So that's all for today. If you like this content, please do subscribe to my channel, like this video, add any comments if you feel there is anything I can improve about this video. Thanks a lot, everyone, for watching till the end.